Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Here.
Commissioner Black, Commissioner Langness,
Present.
Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Keen,
Here.
and Commission Chair Gerard.
Here. We ask if we're able to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda with one change. Item 7 will be deleted this evening. We're going to table it and it'll be renoticed for the public hearing. This is for the zoning text amendment for non-conforming accessory structures.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from July 26, 2017.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Next up is a zoning map amendment application and comprehensive plan amendment application for 5631 190th Street North. This is a public hearing. It's also, we're going to consider a comprehensive plan amendment and consider a zoning map amendment. The way that this will work this evening is that the city will present the facts as they know them. The planning commissioners will then ask the city any questions that we have. We will ask the applicant if they would like to say a few words. We may have a few questions for them. Then we will move to the public hearing part where we'll invite any and all who wish to participate, and I'll explain a little bit how that goes when we get there. So with that, Donovan, are you presenting?
Yes, sir.
All
Chair-
yours.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, what we have is a resubmittal of a comprehensive plan amendment and zoning map amendment that the Planning Commission previously heard back in, first in June. At that time, actually end of May, at that time, the Planning Commission wished that the applicant then meet with members of the neighborhood and to discuss this application. That meeting was held on June 6th at Tannersburg Golf Course. And upon further reflection, the applicant then withdrew, and now he's reapplied. During this time,
Donovan, can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Jolene, my screen is not on.
Oh, the button right there.
Where? Here?
It's the one thing I can find.
Oh, there. Okay. Okay. Sorry.
If you recall, the original application was for the zoning map amendment strictly to apply to the applicant's property, approximately a 15-acre site on 190th, just east of Fenway. And the boundaries of the property are, roughly, this somewhat S-shaped property on the west of Tannersburg Golf Course, and here's 190th Street. At that time, I'd recommended denial of the application due to the size, due to the outside of the MUSA boundary, due to it not being anything, having no support for the comprehensive plan. And that basically is a concept subdivision that went through the review process with the Planning Commission and City Council. And as you recall, at the Planning Commission level, there was, some support, but it was somewhat mixed. I believe there was more favorable support from the City Council. So based on that, the applicant Caleb Smith, who's here, came and presented the initial request to you all. And then they had the June neighborhood meeting. And so, after that meeting, Caleb and I sat down and we discussed basically what would constitute a comprehensive plan amendment. What could I recommend to the Plan Commission? And really what I was looking for was something that was more comprehensive, something that related in a broader goals of the city, more support with a comprehensive plan. And so, in response, Caleb has proposed to take what was about the 15, 16 acre parcel as a comprehensive plan amendment, and now has, the current application is for a 184 acre parcel that takes, boundaries basically are 190th on the north side. Caleb's, part of Caleb's western boundary here, all the way to the south, southern border of the Tannersbrook Golf Course and Forest Boulevard on the west side. This is approximately 184 acres. There are 13 property owners. Probably by acreage, the majority property owner is the golf course. And reviewing how this works with what support there is within the comprehensive plan, how it's consistent with existing city goals. This does, doesn't involve areas that are, natural areas, open space, and regionally significant areas. It's labeled as a semi-natural area, but the majority of the semi-natural area is actually golf course property, which of course, has been, received some level of development and change. There's also related to housing goals that talk about expanding urban areas having a minimum density, and this would have a minimum density that would provide actually something of a different housing type, potentially, and particularly with Mr. Smith's application for properties fronting the golf course at about a 1.2 dwelling unit per acre density. And the overall part of the zoning map amendments refer to with their consistency with current land uses. And as far as current land uses go, there's quite a wide variety, from the golf course recreation to small agriculture to woodland to residential. There aren't many lots that conform to the zoning code's minimum of 20 acres in this area. And then looking at different this is the land use map, which shows how this area is in the future residential in the comprehensive plan, and how this area is currently considered post 2030 according to the utility staging plan, and how there is currently a collector road designated in the transportation plan for 190th, as shown here. And because of this adjacency to Highway 61, it's expected that most of the traffic would come down. Most traffic would come from the north and come down 61, rather than on the currently gravel roads along Fenway and 190th. The big concern, I believe, among staff is the fact that while there could be a sewer connection to the interceptor sewer that's currently basically on the running approximately in that green, you can see that green line here is the interceptor running the west side of the property. A connection could be made on 190th Street. However, there's no public water. And public water is approximately 6,000 feet away along the roadways. And so this, property as it's currently, configured, all properties within this area would need to be on private well. I mean, they are on wells now, but if it's further developed, there would be, more wells. And that's a concern to the city engineer and myself, because currently the existing city wells are located in the Mount Simon Aquifer, which is the deepest aquifer available, approximately 600 feet down. But there's a moratorium on this aquifer that prohibits any future wells into it. And if this moratorium isn't lifted, any future municipal wells, and it's expected that the city will drill an additional well in the next 10, 15 years, that the city may have to actually drill into the same aquifer as the homes located in this area. And so for that reason, my staff recommendation is for recommendation of this, of a planning commission recommendation of approval for this, with the condition that the city takes a proactive step to provide city water to this area. This, of course, would be quite a shift from current city policy, where all the infrastructure improvements are developer-driven. And this could be accomplished as far in the financing, of course, would be this is the big issue. This could be financed through either deferred assessments for all impacted properties or through bonding. Currently the city's doing bonding for the improvements regarding the sanitary sewer, such as a lift station maintenance. But this is not a stance that the city has not taken before. Hawthorne Heights, which is located on 202nd Street, just east of Goodview. In 2004, the city did extend city water and sewer to the intersection of Goodview and 202nd, which then most likely spurred that development of Hawthorne Heights there, which was, some 60, 70 units. But I believe that, looking comprehensively and also taking a cue, I believe, from Councilmember Freer, when he, when looking at this, the original comprehensive plan amendment, or just the subdivision, and said, this is 2030 is now. I mean, this in some ways is a conversation that will be a part of this comprehensive plan update that we're currently, engaged with. And by the way, there is a survey on the county website, city website. I encourage everyone to fill out. There's a comprehensive plan update website page. But essentially, we're having this is a conversation that we'll be engaged with for the next couple of years, which is, how does the city want to grow beyond its MUSA boundary, or if the city wants to grow. So in that way, it's, framed that way, it's not, such a premature thing to be talking about an expansion of the MUSA boundary. But right now, I believe that, it's time we have this discussion, and it's time to look at it responsibly, that if the city wants to grow in these ways and it's zoned appropriately, and I'm referring also to the areas north of 190th, that we've seen some development in Headwaters area, and then recently the Tannersburg Golf Course doing a 10-acre minor subdivision along Fenway, that perhaps things are changing and it's time to look again at how the city could be proactive about promoting this kind of growth. So with that, I'd like to open myself up for any questions from the Planning Commission.
Any questions for Donovan?
Chairman?
Start at the end tonight. Eric?
Donovan, you mentioned some more policy pieces around extending the water and the bonding and deferred assessment. Is that a question that the Planning Commission makes a recommendation on, or are we only looking at the zoning piece here? And
I mean, obviously, the plan commission can't spend any money or make any of those, larger policy decisions, or but they can support them. And, that would be I believe, a condition of approval that the, city council, it's hard to say, with the exact language, exact language would be this, that the city consider or strongly promotes development through the provision of water to that area. And part of that piece is some sort of cost estimate of what that actually would cost. And the city engineer is working on that and has not gotten back to me on that, a rough estimate. That's definitely part of the picture.
So from us, you're looking for, do we support the big picture, not the detail of how that would be funded?
Correct.
Thank you.
In order for this application to proceed to the city council, it does need, at least for the comprehensive plan amendment, it does require a plan commission recommendation of approval.
Mike?
Donovan, you mentioned that in 2004, the city expanded the water and sewer to an area. How far did they have to expand that out there at the time?
It's only a few hundred yards.
So it's not 6,000 feet?
No. The scale is different. I'm just saying that it's not unprecedented, but
Well-
this is a much larger scale,
Okay,
to be sure.
so that could have been down the road a few years in the comprehensive plan at that time, not 15, 20 years down.
You're
at
saying
that time.
that they did that in response to comp plan?
No, in 2004, if they're expanding it just a couple hundred yards, that's not a couple of miles.
Right.
Okay.
Sir?
Can you, I'm fundamentally opposed to leapfrogging developments, but can you go back on the map and show with some certainty how this water would affect the land that is closer to the currently developed land of Forest Lake?
But where we have,
Where does the water stop
yeah,
south of the Washington County Service Center?
and so here you have water and sewer. It's Headwaters Parkway, essentially. And so this is the Leela School here. There's the Headwaters development there. So what we're talking about is coming south here on Fenway over, and this is the comprehensive plan amendment area down here.
So the water is not available south of Headwater Parkway
Correct,
today?
correct. And this is the location of that Tanner's Brook minor subdivision, this area right here. And this is currently city-owned property.
Now, isn't that city-owned property there designed for multi-purpose or multifamily housing?
It's
Or is
zoned,
it single family?
it's zoned MXR1, so it's, the single family, some attached units. It was part of the Headwaters concept plan, but currently, it wasn't replatted, and that development plan is expired.
But it's there without utilities.
Correct.
So if they went ahead with a water plan, it has sewer availability connection,
Yeah,
correct?
with a, if you, there's
A
sewer there.
new water facility there would serve that area as well as down the road
Correct,
to 190th.
correct.
I don't have any questions at this time. I guess that when it gets time to discuss views on moving forward with the 2030 plan amendment, I have no problem with having that area designated as a low-density area of development. And when the city gets to the point of seeing fit to extend water and sewer down that far, then that would be the appropriate time to do that, in my opinion. So I have no objection to that type of development down there, but I would not want to be leapfrogging development on a timeline basis either. If the city feels like it's time to move the city sewer and water down that way that far, that seems like an appropriate time to do that. And I would support that at the time, but I don't believe that this is the time to do that.
Other question, Mike?
Donovan, when this plan first came before us, it was around 15 acres,
Yeah, it currently is that,
and now it's up to 184 acres?
correct.
Did I miss a meeting, or is this something new?
This is a resubmittal.
Okay, because I
You know.
well, I think most of us just found out about this tonight. The 184 acres. That's a big jump from 15 acres to 184.
Correct, it is. No, I understand that, and, part of this was, what would be, the kind of question is, what's comprehensive? Because 15 acres, in my opinion, is not. This is comprehensive. And comprehensive, of course, for me involves, city support of that, in this location. And all along, it would be a support for the whole region. It's been zoned residential, and, so there's no, there's no surprise there. But it's, but it'd be supporting that further development. And, as I mentioned, currently there is a gap, and the gap, between there and even the Tanner's Brook parcel. And, there's other parcels in the area that are for sale that potentially they would tap into this.
But I'm probably missing something here too, that the reason for making it 184 acres is so that it makes sense to do something? Is that what I'm hearing?
What makes it comprehensive? In many ways, this is the same conversation that I think, the city council is going to be having, this fall. It's kind of bubbled up. There's been mentions that city council would like to expand the MUSA boundary, to accommodate future development. There's some, there's also some concern that, if you kind of read through the lines of some of the Met Council planning literature, I can see that, they're looking at some areas that, until some long-range future date, there won't be sewer capacity to serve those areas. And there hasn't been serious planning, but Ryan talks about how, the city engineer talks about how, they are looking to create another wastewater treatment plant somewhere in this, northeastern section of the metro. Of course, that takes years to plan and finance. And so, if the city, does choose to grow, does choose to expand its MUSA boundary, I think there's some rationale for saying, for this 2040 comprehensive plan update, that there's a reason to do it. And I can see in this area, because it's adjacency to Highway 61, and the fact that expanding the MUSA boundary, like westward here, I don't know if you can see some of the details of these 10-acre lots, it's just south of 190th, and that would really serve no purpose over in that area. And, so this is an area that, future development, future density could be placed, and, could provide a different, type of residential living. Maybe it's a single family density out there. The application didn't actually, request, a future land use designation for that. And I would, recommend that is a low-medium density residential, which would comply with Met Council minimum density of three dwelling units per acre. But, you know, that's how it can be planned, and that's how, you know, that's how efficient infrastructure extension is provided for. But development, you know, proposals come in, and oftentimes, you know, they may not be at that 3 unit per density, just as a practical matter. And so, you know, I mean, the answer to your question, Gary, is somewhat, yes, it's big enough to make it worthwhile. But it's also big enough to be somewhat eye-catching, you know, that this would be a big step for the city, but this is how these things are done. I mean, MUSA boundaries aren't really, it's not really a nip and tuck type exercise. It is something of a larger scope, and this, I believe, represents that.
Eric?
Hey, Donovan, can you turn the MUSA line on the map?
Yeah, it's here. It's the green line right there.
The
I'm sorry,
MUSA
MUSA, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a MUSA.
That's the sewer interceptor. The green. The MUSA boundary is what I'm asking for.
It's 190th.
And then this property butts right up to that between the sewer interceptor 61, and it goes straight south about halfway between the MUSA and Hugo's border, correct?
Yeah, the comprehensive plan amendment, yes, it's right, yeah, this bounded by where the arrow is.
So it's not like we're adding a piece of sewer property that's not contiguous with the rest of what we have. The sewer line's there, so it's really only adding the water piece is the part that's leapfrogging.
Well, I mean, I think leapfrogging generally refers to the residential development. I mean, the sewer extension, I mean, that would, you know, enable that, but I think when most people refer to leapfrogging, it's the development that's discontinuous with other similar development. In this case,
And I guess I don't really see that either, because between this property and where the development is at Headwaters, if we want to say that's kind of the southern edge, we have the city's property there, the golf course, and then it's this property. The golf course is essentially developed already, and the city's property, if I'm not correct, has it had conversation or plans presented of any nature?
not in years, no. I mean, you know, the city doesn't want to be in the business of competing with private landowners trying to sell their property. And, you know, if a developer came and had grand plans and offered the city the right price, I think that, you know, that could change things. But currently, we're not in that situation.
So if this property that triggered this entire conversation were to be developed with water going down that direction, would it potentially spear the city's property to be more amicable to be sold to a realtor and developed?
That's possible. I mean, also a big factor there is that southern leg of the Headwaters Parkway is being, you know, built, which that was something around, I can't recall the exact construction costs, but over $1 million of infrastructure that the property owner, developer would have had to, you know, pay for, but now they don't.
The chances of, excuse me, I'm jumping in here, but the chances of the city property being developed without water is probably slim and none.
Water's right there.
Yes, I would just say yes, I would say none. I mean, the water's right there. I mean, there's no reason why, you know, it would be developed without water.
So can water be given to that property without a new water tower and such?
Yes.
It can be, but it can't be to the 190th area.
No, I mean, the demand isn't there yet. to require a water tower just simply for this, for this area, it's, and I'm not sure where the threshold is for requiring it. I just know that that's, in the long-range plans, the city does envision a third water tower, I'm sorry, well, a third well, which would, of course, be a third water tower. But that's, they haven't done the modeling to discover, really where the demand's needed, what areas would be best suited for that.
Mike?
Donovan, has anyone looked into this new 184 acre plan here and looked at it as far as like where the lift stations would be and stuff to hook into this mucilage?
No, at this point, we really don't have enough information to make that kind of decision, and that's really, almost parcel by parcel. That if, for instance, if Mr. Smith's property was developed along the Tanner's Brook Golf Course, the city would oversize that one line and put it at depth to, serve as properties as far east as possible. But then beyond that, I can't really say for certain.
So they may need a lift station installed there at some point to get the sewage over to the main line.
I think that's a safe bet, that somewhere, in there, yes.
What's the average, do you know what the average price is for a cost for a lift station?
Something around $250,000.
150? Okay.
What's the effect on the other property owners that are now being included in that amendment?
At this point, just a change in zoning map would not, incur any cost for them. But if the city water and sewer was extended to this area, and there were assessments, they would have to pay the assessments. This can, may not actually, it can be done in a deferred way, so that the current owner doesn't pay for it. But once assessment's made, there is interest on that. Again, that's part of the, part of the tough decision around extending this. For some people, they would see that as a great benefit, and include any sort of assessment in a sale price of the property, and be basically, part of that whole development economy. And of course, others would see it very differently and see that as a cost that they really didn't want to assume. And of course, there's the bonding part of it as well. And these are, of course, is a bigger conversation involving city council. And we have not taken it as a workshop to like what they would just how they would approach this. But just in conversations with the city attorney around the funding mechanism of assessments, he believes that all the properties would pencil out where the assessment of the property value following the introduction of city water and sewer to this area would definitely allow the properties to receive an economic benefit greater than the assessment cost.
So if we chose to recommend to the city that this amendment be approved with the idea that they would have to wrestle with how to take care of the water sewer situation? Or
That or strike that condition and approve it without the provision of city water and sewer. This role, that's that's an uncertainty around it. But I just I feel uncomfortable recommending it without some plan or some plan or some mechanism to bring public water there, without, just having this number of potentially, at a residential density, having, this larger area on well waters, I don't believe is a good city policy.
What's the negative of each house having their own well?
It increases the chances of contamination of the aquifer. And then especially if the city has to drill into the same aquifer, that's just, it's really compounding that impact or potential public safety hazard or concern.
Mike?
Two questions. If the city has to drill into that aquifer, would that make would the homeowners then be responsible for plugging up their wells? I mean, would they have to, or are they gonna be allowed to keep their private wells?
Well, in this case, I mean, the city wouldn't locate a city well within a sensitive area.
No, I mean, if
Where
they
there's
put
a
in a
private
well,
well.
they're gonna be tapping into that aquifer. Now, if there's other people tapped into that, and they're like ahead of the program here, and then they get the city water, are they gonna be required then to plug up their personal wells?
There is actually, there's case law around this, and our city attorney says that there's not, currently there's no way to force someone to go onto the city water.
Okay.
And, I think he's, I think Jay believes that there is not a mechanism to force someone onto city water.
But if they went on city water, would they have to discontinue their own old well?
I think that'd be a condition, yes. I mean, the idea would be that they decrease the amount of, wells. I mean, we're currently in plan now to discover wells, and this was actually part of the Lighthouse Lofts development, sealing the wells over that site. Because each well does represent a potential source of contamination of the aquifer.
Mr. Chair? Just to clarify that, are you saying that it is a legal requirement that somebody that goes on city water would have to certainly plug their well? And the reason I ask the question is, I know that some communities allow people to keep their wells, they use them for lawn maintenance and this sort of thing, but there are communities in the metro area that do not require a capping of a well once they go on city. So are you saying that Forest Lake does require that as a legal contract?
No, I'm not aware of that.
We have that zoning text on it.
Yeah.
Require sealing of wells after they get to the failing point.
At a given point?
After they fail,
Oh.
they wouldn't be able to redrain the well if they're within 500 feet
Okay, in the Lewisman area.
within the Duisman, yeah.
Jolene was just updating me to something that was a part of the workshop on this past Monday that's actually related to the well drilling moratorium the city currently has. I haven't read the text of that, but it does relate to that if you do have a well within a sensitive area surrounding a city well, that if your well does fail, then you're required to actually then tap into city water. And these are all areas where city water is available. And there are locations, for instance, some of the golf courses have their wells for landscape, for irrigation purposes. But no, but to answer your question, Commissioner Cunningham, no, I don't believe there's currently a city requirement that you seal your well if you tap into city water.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
My second question was, if they run this water line all the way to this area, are those farmers and stuff that have, hundreds of acres of property out there, are they responsible are they gonna get tagged a bill for that? To run that down their property line or down the ditch in the street? Are they gonna be assessed?
Yes, they could be assessed, yes. I mean, they would be as impacted properties.
Okay.
It's based on linear frontage,
Even if they don't tap into it?
correct. This would be this could be part of a deferred assessment You know, and there are different types of deferred assessments too. There's, you know, Green Acres programs as well that, but, you know, and that's, I mean, that's one funding mechanism. The other one is bonding, which does spread the cost among, you know, all city residents. But, and this is something that is, you know, the bonding part of it, you know, to be proactive about this extension of infrastructure isn't something that Forest Lake has done much, like I mentioned the Hawthorne Heights example. But it, you know, it is done in other cities too, so it's, but it does represent a, you know, shift in philosophy. But I also see that if the city wants to be proactive about growth and really welcome the growth, this is one way to do it.
Are we good for now? Would the applicant like to say a few words?
I didn't really have much to say, but just to reiterate what we were talking about, Donovan and I, when we sat down and talked about this plan, the land that we included in this, the reason we drew the lines and the boundaries where we did was everything within this isn't agriculture. No one's using it as agriculture as far as it's under the 20 acres for every single one, I think, except for the golf course. And the golf course isn't agriculture, it's recreational. So it's almost cleaning up the zoning. They're all basically single-family zoning as far as it is already. So it's just kind of cleaning up the zoning on the map and extending the MUSA boundary around it is like, I think Commissioner Paul, you said something about spot zoning, how it was too small, it was a spot zoning type thing. This kind of took that and said, okay, let's not spot zone. And I had no idea when I was talking with Donovan that we could even do this and extend it to further out. I thought I could only do my property and have to get permission in order to zone other people's properties. And when we talked about it and found out you didn't, we could actually do this as a city plan. And it made a lot more sense to go this route. So that's why we postponed everything, re-amended the application and moved forward in that direction, because this seemed to be one of the biggest hiccups in the last plan was just the way the lines were drawn and everything else. This seemed to be a lot more comprehensive, like Donovan said. So it seemed to make more sense. The whole water side of it, we had proposed as far as, I mean, which isn't, like Donovan said, it's not really on the voting tonight, but future plan as far as into the development. We had talked about doing wells for all the properties, you know, sleeping in the water, and then someday when water came, we could cap the wells and go to city water. Kind of being that finger out there saying, hey, when city water finally gets here, a reason to start bringing city water down. But now looking at it over and over and talking with a bunch of the city council members and stuff like that, we've kind of realized that, you know, bringing water down to the area might actually help really spur, because the golf course is really acting as an interfere for development to keep moving south. And then anyone else that's in the MUSA already, as the water line goes down, like Donovan said, they're going to benefit huge from having the water down. So as far as the assessments, as far as you had brought up the linear feet, you know, in the frontage, doing the math, they're going to gain more than they're going to lose. You know, as far as if they wanted to sell their property to a developer, it's going to be that much more valuable to have those things there versus a developer looking at it today saying, well, I got to pay so much to get that down here that I can't buy that land for that much. Now it flips. It makes it really achievable for a developer to buy all that land and start developing. So it might actually spur the land that we're leapfrogging to go down to get developed above it. And it should make the sewer more accessible. Instead of having to put in a lift to go up to the headwaters, now we have the interceptor down on 190th. So anyone to the north can go down and into that way. So it may make it actually more achievable at a better, you know, cost-effective way of doing it. So it seems to be, just from talking with Donovan, the city attorney, city, you know, engineer, this actually seems like it's fitting way better than my plan was into the comprehensive plan, you know, into the future of what Forest Lake is looking for. So, did you guys have any questions for me?
Any
specific?
questions for the applicant? You'll be here, we may later.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. The way this works is that we invite anyone who wishes to speak to this application to please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and then spend a couple minutes telling us your thoughts on this application. So with that, we'll formally open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this issue?
Good evening, council members. Henry Votel and Trish Votel from 6015 190th Street. We're the first house east of 61. I'm kind of sad tonight that we didn't get an invitation to the meeting back in June because we only got about 7 neighbors out on 190th Street between Fenway and 61. So I don't know how we got missed, but yeah, interestingly enough, I looked up leapfrog and spot zoning on the internet tonight. I'm just kind of kidding. There was a picture of this area. And if there's a classic case for it, whether it's comprehensive plan or zoning, this is leapfrog development and spot zoning. I only have a few points, but I looked at the comprehensive plan, 2030. It's designated for ag, and I think the current information at the internet site still has it out there for up to 2040. I understand things can change, but process of amending the comprehensive plan, in my experiences, and I've done a lot of land development, is that this kind of situation where you're jumping over other properties before there's even demand is very unusual. Simply, in 1982, in North Shoreview, 4 square miles of ground, similar to this, some development, old farm area. I and 4 other developers wanted to develop our large parcels. The neighbors didn't want it, the city wasn't sure it wanted to go there, but all 4 of us developers had no problem when we told the city, we'll pay for the water and sewer line extension for a mile. Everybody was happy, and I don't have any problem if you pay for it. And you're going to develop your property before the rest of us are going to develop our property. So what is really happening if we get assessments is that we get an involuntary mortgage on our site that we have to pay for years, and deferred is not postponed. In fact, you get additional interest added on that deferment. So it's expensive, and it's not a Band-Aid for anybody with a parcel that gets an assessment. If you're going to do the development and plat your property, next we're going to see, 190th Street, we need paved street. And about 3 weeks ago, our recycled asphalt got torn off, and we got gravel again. And it's dusty. And the golf course has traffic, and I watched 2 classic cars come in and out because they go down to the golf course. They're driving slow. They don't like that gravel. I don't know where the golf course people are on that road and how that got ripped off, but I'd rather have the crappy old recycle on there than what we got now. And this last weekend, I stopped counting at 50 trucks hauling gravel up to the roundabout development. Why weren't they using Swamp Water's road to get out of there? Why are they coming down to 190th Street? But we're going to have dust. And let's put another 13 houses on 190th or so, where we only got about 6 or 7, and all the other traffic that takes it, and we'll have more dust. Any assessments for road and street, it's going to be a major collector, so it's certainly going to be more expensive than just a regular city street. The issues get to be complicated. The first step is amend the comprehensive plan. Let's amend the zoning. Then it's going to be let's go for the assessments, and it's going to be spread over to all benefiting properties. And, I sound kind of negative, don't I? But I'm not negative if you pay for it. And the development on the golf course, and anybody else that wants to join in. That's development expense to get your mains. And they're not even that far away, so. That's my take on the development. I'm not for this at this point in time. It's premature. In another 5 or 10 years, when we got infill, where did I hear that word? Met Council. Filling in that area that's north of us, coming south. It'll make more sense then. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the issue?
Dan Taylor. Thank you guys for giving me a second to speak. I want to back up on this water, and if we looked at that map, it's 3/4 of a mile down Fenway. It's 1 mile on 190th, and then it's 3/4 of a mile back to make that round. That's 2.5 miles. That's a lot of feet. What's the cost per foot? Lineal foot. You told me what, you said there's a cost that'll be inferred on a linear foot. So do you have a number?
Actually, I don't. I was waiting for Ryan to provide something, but.
Well, I'm sure it's not cheap.
Right.
So make that. I'm most concerned because we're not hearing from Tanner's Brook here. So I don't know where Tanner's Brook stands on this. But, you know, you can say it's filled, but that's basically open farmland. And it could get tore out and filled with houses just as easy as anything else. So don't make the assumption that it's not filled. The right money moves through, the right business park moves in, the right advertising, whatever. We start to get that filled. That golf course can go anywhere. I'm just saying, don't think it's filled. I'd also say, you know, by the last numbers, I think there's 1,700 lots that was in this last front around that are not filled, that are in the MUSA line. I mean, again, I agree with Henry. This is leapfrogging. This is classic leapfrogging. If you were to pull that map up and you looked at that Headwaters project and you carry it past the Lila School, we already have a lift station that is set to service another 400 homes right there. Everything's there. The water's there. The lift station's there. And there's nobody asking to build there. So again, if you're going to add 184 acres, there's a part of me that's not against this, believe me, because if we're going to, I think what I want to get back to is what we're being asked to do, what we're asking you to do, or what is being asked of you, is to decide the comp plan ahead of the comp plan. If this is an issue about timing, let's let the comp plan have its year. We're only a year away. Let's deal with the comp plan and let that, I could easily be one of the people that's saying, you know, I own 75 acres there. I'd like to be a part of that, okay? But it's not, it's premature. Again, that's, I'm gonna just say that it's premature. Again, with the, I've seen this deferred, argue with Caleb that this is deferred cost on this water main. For me, it's close to 5,000 feet. And on that cost, it is deferred, but it's not free. And it is not without interest. And if the development doesn't come timely, fast enough, you lose it. Actually, I could probably give the land away today and be better off than to pay it later. And that's not my goal. It's about timing. And this timing is not correct here. And so there's one other thing, and that is, I think by allowing wells in this project, we are deciding that to grandfather every well into that project. Because once they're in, they're in. And there's nobody, you know, you're just like he said, you can't mandate them to hook up. I would think you would have a hard time mandating that they plug them. So, I think I've got 100 more things I could tell you, but I think that covers the waterfront on the beginning of how I feel on this. So I do not support this at this time. I do think that coming out of the comp plan, if this is included in the comp plan, I can support it.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to the issue?
Betty Bender, Dan's wife, and we live on 18980 Fenway. We live on the west side of Fenway. So I'm reporting back from the June 6th meeting where community members met and had a discussion about would we like a comp plan zoning change? And the consensus was no. And it seems like now today, the very people that said no are being asked to pay for this water assessment. So we said, no, we don't want a zoning change because of the land usage. We are happy with more rural. And now we're being asked to pay for an assessment, it appears, because I think that's the current policy, when we have septics and wells that are perfectly functioning, and we don't have the density that would make sense to have city services. And the property, Caleb's development is a little cluster, but the golf course is huge, so the well's not gonna benefit the golf course. And then there's a few houses along 61, and they already have their septic and sewer and aren't gonna be developed. So it's still spot zoning because the other 90% of the new square is gonna stay the same. So thank you for listening to our opinions, and I'm giving you the feedback from the June 6th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Henry Votel again from 190th Street, and my neighbors are kind of quiet, and some of them are usually pretty loud, but, you know, I think I'd like to ask if there's people here who are against this, please raise your hand so that the council knows what the trend is in the audience here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address? Sir?
Hey, my name is Ben Hergert. I live on 19400 Forest Road North. So I don't know a whole lot about this whole thing. I just got this letter in the mail last week or whatnot, but does this project include Forest Road North? I'm north of 190th.
No, it does not include.
So you'd go down Fenway and come east?
Well, the actual application does not include that area, but if city water was extended, it would probably loop up Forest Road, Forest Boulevard. So, I mean, potentially your property could be impacted.
Okay, and then just a little bit of history, you know, I'm fairly new to the area. We bought our house 2.5 years ago or so, and we bought it with a non-compliant septic system. So I'm 35 years old. I have a good salary, good paying job, but I'm not wealthy by any means. And I had to pay $17,000 to put that pile of dirt in my yard, so I'm only 2 years into paying for it. I got 8 more years to go. It's assessed through Washington County and whatnot, but I would be, I guess, against it. The thought of sewer sounds good, but at the same time, I just put my own sewer in, so I'm good to go. I don't want any additional costs added on to my lifestyle, basically. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak to the issue?
My name is Myron Winia. Live at 5975 190th South. I was for this project originally when they had their own wells. If this is just too early and too much cost for these homeowners, and it's an unknown cost. Until you cannot approve this until the city comes up with a cost estimate for everybody. There's not a one of us that live on here that want this now, until we know what it's gonna cost. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I think we're way off on a tangent that wasn't supposed to be necessarily a thought on tonight. The discussion tonight was just the rezoning and then the MUSA boundary. And we can't continue forward to learn about those costs until we get to the next step. So being this included into the MUSA and everything, as far as the city bringing water and the assessments and the wells and all of that, we can't even get to the next step unless tonight we make a decision to go to the city council, to then go to the Met Council to see if they even approve this plan to be adjusted. And then if they did, then we'd come back in the development phase, and then this would be on the development side of us developing, how's the water gonna be there, are the wells, all of that, that would be more on the development side of this. So we're foreseeing a problem that might not be a problem, but has really no bearing on tonight's decision over whether or not we continue moving forward to find out if that will be an issue. I mean, we can foresee, yeah, there is an issue with water, that's why we've talked about it, and Donovan and I used the engineer, we've discussed ideas, the city council has said they would like to see water extended that way. But there hasn't been any decisions made, there's no assessments already planned to stick into these homeowners or anything like that. And tonight, that's not a decision being made, but I think that was a recommendation that we could put forth going forward, that we need to figure that out before we can approve further into this. But I don't think that has a bearing on tonight's decision, unless I'm wrong, but I feel like that tonight's decision was zoning and the MUSA boundary being expanded, correct?
Correct, I mean, those are the
Yep,
applications.
and we can have them use that as a recommendation to figure out water tonight, right? I mean, they can add that into it, but it doesn't even need to necessarily be there. The water isn't I mean, that seems to be the biggest hiccup off of everybody here, but we can't figure out more into it unless we continue moving forward into this, correct?
Well, I mean, there are many uncertainties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we can't solve that tonight, and this vote doesn't solve that. Whether, you know what I mean, this vote doesn't automatically key that now they have assessments on their properties.
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a matter of, in city council, looking at options.
Yep,
But
and we haven't even, you've brought up the bonding option as well of bringing water down. We haven't even discussed the option of just doing the wells and not doing city water. You know, I mean, there's a lot of options in the air that don't affect these people as much, so when they say they're against it, that's what I mean, unless I'm wrong, but I feel like that's exactly what everyone says they're against. Yeah,
The city can make preliminary assessments on what the cost of this would be with some basic engineering. They don't have to wait,
But-
get a comprehensive plan and then get rezoning and
But-
then they can do that.
but what I'm saying, no, you're right, but what I'm saying is, this doesn't affect that tonight.
First you put a pot, then you put some water in it, then you turn on the stove.
No, no,
then
no.
you turn on-
Could we have,
I'm gonna ask that we,
Yeah.
I can appreciate that there's disagreement
Yeah.
here, but I need to have you address the
Sorry,
commission, please.
yes.
And you're welcome to come back up and address again, but I
So-
need to have some kind of order, or these other commissioners will beat me.
So I guess that's what I'm saying, is just that I think tonight, the decision of moving forward onto those, I mean, this could be dead in the water anyways, if the Met Council says absolutely not, wait for the comp plan, that's coming up and we're not gonna approve this until we see what the new comp plan looks like. And then the issue was never, it wasn't an issue at all. So I just don't wanna foresee, I don't like when there's a problem that's coming and saying, well, let's not even get there. When, well, let's keep working towards it, and if we get there, then let's solve it, and it's an issue I think that can be solved. So, that was my 2 cents, I guess. Did you guys have any other questions for me again, or no?
No.
Okay.
The only question I would have is
Yep.
that, your timeline is not gonna change much if you wait for the comp plan to be revised.
Yes.
Not true?
No, it would change by, if we could keep this moving, we could be potentially, give or take, by next spring. If we wait the other way, it'd be at least another 3 years before everything would get rolling into that direction. So it moves it by 2.5 years. So that's why we're doing, because otherwise, if it was only a matter of a little bit of time, why wouldn't we just wait and see what we could do with the comp plan? So doing it this way seemed to be the more appropriate way to go. Plus, it would be the lot cheaper route because of the application fees and everything else. Waiting that little bit of time would have been a better decision. So because it's such a far way out, this was the better route to go.
All right, thank you. Anyone wish to speak to the issue? Anyone additional? Sir?
Myron Winia, 5975 190th South. Like I said, this is way ahead of its time. You cannot ask us to accept this on good faith, because we all know where that gets you. We need estimates and we need better information before we can just say, oh, go ahead with it, because this is not cheap. Between the road, sewer, water, whatever comes, this could end up costing us $40,000 or more, depending on what the costs are. And you have to let us know before you should even start approving anything like this. There has to be, you don't build a building without knowing the cost estimate before you do it. You can't just say, I'm gonna put up a skyscraper and I don't know what it's gonna cost. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dan Taylor, and thank you again. So, again, I want to remind you that the way I see this is you're asking to decide the comp plan ahead of the comp plan. That's the way I see it. And I would like to be a part of this comp plan. And I'm not against this particular comp plan being expanded. But nobody asked me to participate on 75 acres that I own in that same zone. So I think, again, we're putting the cart in front of the horse. Let's just back this up a little bit. If we're gonna do a rezoning or on the comp plan, let's do what, as all the neighbors trying to get along here, not just one. And again, I want to remind you that we are not hearing from Tannersbrook. So I think that's a big thing.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have said that on the last time I was up here. Tannersbrook is 100% for this. We've talked repeatedly about this plan and the idea of including them into the rezoning. The only thing they had an issue with was, would it change their tax status? Would it change anything? And as long as they continue to use it the same way that it is being used, it won't affect that in any way. And they would be more than happy, because half of their northern half of the golf course is in the already, what zoning is it in? It's in a mixed use or whatever?
MXR1.
Yep, MXR1, and the southern half's in agriculture. So moving this to a single-family zoning won't affect them in that impact. So they were totally okay with it. They would love to see, houses being built around their golf course. This would help to impact that other side over by 61, that maybe someday now that would be more feasible for someone else to be able to develop that area and put more houses along the golf course. So hence the dividing of their land to the north side of it, because they want to see, townhomes and houses going in up there as well. So that was what they said about it. So just passing along the information, because Dan's brought it up twice that we haven't heard from them and what they want to do. They said they would like to stay here. They've been here for a long time. They'd like to be here for a lot longer. So putting houses around them seems to solidify them into the community better, and they would love to see that happen, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
So my response to that is, Tannersbrook is not here. They're not represented here. They didn't come to the first meeting, the second meeting, or the third meeting. They didn't speak up. I was not there.
Sir.
I was not there. My wife was there. And she could speak to this. They did not speak up. So, again, I would just say, if they're for it, they should be here. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Henry Votel again on 6015 190th, and I think I halfway go with Dan. You know, I think it'd be nice to have houses around the golf course and some other scattered development. Just pay for the mains and the extensions and the street on your dime, and I don't think anybody will object. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the issue? Yes, sir.
Dan Peliquin, 5611. My property joins this 13.2 acres they're talking about here. But I grew up on that farm, and I know the layout of the south 120 that, or 110 that they're talking about on Tanner's Brook. And to my knowledge, there isn't anywhere that they could build homes on that property. You know, not only was I raised there and lived there all my life, but I've golfed there and I know what land there is, and the only land is kind of around me and maybe a little sugar strip south of the property they're talking about. But a couple other things, you know, it seems like they just keep pussyfooting around with the engineer and with Donovan and everyone else to get all this information that is not complete, you know, and it's tentative. And I don't know how we're supposed to read all that, you know. It's just hearsay. You know, they said, whatever, you know, agree with Dan that some of the representatives that are for this, they're not showing up and they're not here with a hand up or a comment. So I'm against this all the way, you know. Everyone that's represented here on the road to 190th and around where the water or the sewer maybe be pulled is over 55 years old. We surely don't want to right now kind of leap into assessments that will kind of take the majority of our profit out of our property, or, you know, our small acreage, which was grandfathered in back as the plan changed, 5 acres, 10 acres, or now 20 in the agriculture side. So if Tanner's Brook wants to develop and the north side of that golf course is already zoned for housing, let them build all they want over there. We ain't changing our zoning on our side. At that meeting we had at Tanner's Brook, one of your representatives is all that showed up from this whole council, and one new city member, a lady that was just starting out. And the consensus was that to ask if anybody would be willing to zone there, and no one wanted to change zoning. So with that, I leave you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to the issue? Last call. Does anyone else wish to speak to the issue? See no one coming forward, we will close to, just in the nick of time, sir.
Greg Schwintek, 5590 190th Street. I'm on the north side from the Pelican Homestead. I agree with a lot of what was said earlier. It looks, from my perspective, we have 4 members that aren't participating here from the board, from the commission, and we all just found out about this. Obviously, you folks didn't know anything about this till tonight with regard to the scope. You're talking almost a square mile, 2/3 of a square mile. But I'll refer back to the comp plan. There's a process there, and we've been living with it for a long time. I don't understand the leapfrogging. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Once again, does anyone else wish to speak to the issue? Last chance, does anyone else wish to speak to the issue? Seeing no one coming forward, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for a recommendation to city council. Eric?
Donovan, I have a question. I want to say I recall at one point, and it may have been the previous application in this area, but was it discussed at one point that the water and the loop back, if it went to this property, that property owner or the developer would have to pay for that? When did this assessment piece or bonding or all of these other topics come into play?
It came into play when I considered what can I recommend? And my concern around the multiple drills drilled into this aquifer made me realize that, this was simply kind of opening a Pandora's box. It's based on, Mr. Smith's development of these limited number of acres, that's not a real big concern. But when we're talking about a much larger area, then I believe that, the infrastructure is needed to serve the area. So it was, myself that actually introduced this idea that the water should be extended, and that the city should be proactive about facilitating development throughout the whole area, as well as, the development that Mr. Caleb would propose.
Is there any methodology to have the developer that wants to leapfrog the city water service portion pay for that extension?
But certainly, I mean, they could, there's some places where we'd have to obtain the right-of-way, I mean, the utility easement, but, they could lay pipe alongside the roadways, and that would, in utility easement areas, to the subject property.
So that is another option other than taxing all of the adjacent owners?
Correct.
Is there language you have that we could use if a motion were to be supported on that tonight?
I don't have anything ready, but it could be, there could be a condition that's just that the developer, the applicant, pay for the provision of city water to, his owned property.
Thank you, Donovan. Fellow commissioners, that's my biggest struggle with this, is the water. That's new. I get that that's a real concern of many people. I can't imagine the frustration and concern and anxiety that many of you are going under. I did see these plans last week on Thursday when I logged in and looked at them, so this isn't new to me tonight. But the water piece is new from what I recall last spring into early summer. And quite frankly, I'm not willing to move forward with a plan that is going to assess an entire area this large when everybody except for one or two, and I do believe Tanner's Brook is supportive of this plan. So we'll say two property owners in there want it. It doesn't seem fair to me. It doesn't seem right to me. There's just so many things on that side. I do think it's good. I think that this is future development area for Forest Lake. I think it makes sense. I think there's fair argument whether it's today or whether it happens during the comp plan process. I think that's a fair argument, and I can understand both sides there. I think it's going to happen either way, and I think we should welcome it. And so, you know, if the other members of the commission are supportive of the idea of, you know, modifying Donovan's language to fit that the water line recommendation to the council on that would be to have the developer fund and support that aspect of it, I can move forward this. Otherwise, I would really struggle unless somebody else has got a better idea.
Other comments? I've sat quietly, I wanted to hear all of the comments first, and I'll take full blame for the spot zoning comment. I am not opposed to developing this 180-some acres if it is well thought out by the city, that we want to make this a hub for development, because we do have Hugo just to the south, and we got the city, and we will eventually, especially between the 61 and 35 corridor, that will develop most rapidly is the belief. However, I think we need to be all in doing a development, and which would include sewer, water, and paved roads. And I can't tell you the last development we did, and maybe Donovan, your memory's better than me, that did not include all three. And that's would be my concern, is that we are growing as a city. The rural character will continue to get chipped away some, especially in these busier areas. And if we're going to do it, my vote is we would need to be all in for this type of development. And I don't think at this time the city's ready to go for that. So I also cannot support this motion. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. At this time, there's still too many questions not answered. There's no answers to them at this time. I don't know if we should just table this till we have more commissioners here and discuss it, or we just wait till after the comp plan is finished, because, I mean, that's our Bible. We stick with it, and there's just too many questions unanswered at this time.
I'd have to agree with the other commissioners that have spoken so far, and I would also include that maybe this only sounds like a small consideration, but we've been putting an awful lot of time and effort and media into trying to get people involved with what the comp plan should look like. And I think we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot if we say, yeah, we want your input, and then we jump ahead of that process and say, but we're going to do this anyway, regardless. Now, if we hadn't started the process of developing the new comp plan, then I'd be more likely to say a zoning change might be worthwhile considering here. But as our chairman mentioned, I can't recall a time when we haven't put together a full-blown plan for development that the city is totally behind before we did it. And there's just too many loose threads here to look comprehensive. I appreciate the time that went into increasing the area, but I don't think that changes the fact that it's still quite a bit disconnected from the rest of the growth that's there right now. And I think we have to have a more comprehensive support and idea of what we want to do before we actually move forward. There's just too many questions here to do anything with it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You know, a couple of years ago, we all got together and we said we were going to figure out with developers, make it easier for them to develop land around Forest Lake, and in many cases, find a way to say yes to developers. And I feel bad that this is going the direction it is, because I think that it's even very difficult to say, we could approve this if, because there's way too many ifs. And I don't recall us being asked to make a decision with so much incomplete information. And I guess if I had my choice, I would challenge the city council if they're, so many of the things that are involved here are in their hands. But I guess I would challenge the city council to make some decisions as to what are you going to do, and then come back and have us make a decision that complements what they are willing to do. It just seems, and I said before that I don't like leapfrogging situations. I don't know that development into multi-housing or single-family housing is the best use of that land between there and Forest Lake. I mean, I'm not necessarily convinced of that. I know the city says that they don't want to work with their land because they don't want to compete with the landowners, which I don't know if that really makes any sense. The reason that they're not doing anything with their land is they have no buyers. And maybe they don't have any buyers because they don't have any water. I don't know that, but it just seems that there's so much incomplete information and stuff. I don't know how we would be asked to make a decision, in honesty. I looked again, because I had this last week too, so it's not new to me tonight, but, and I think I had the same situations when I was sitting and looking at it by myself, that this really doesn't make good sense to what we're being asked to do, and so I'd have a hard time supporting it. But in Donovan, I was looking for the staff's recommendation on it, and I don't know that I could find it. Was it there? Did I
Yes,
missed
yes.
it?
It's, the, potentially the city well, in the long run, the city engineer recommends expanding the municipal water supply to include this area. And then, staff recommends that the approval of this proposal, if the city takes the proactive step of extending public water from Headwaters Parkway to 190th Street and looping it back. And
Okay.
in the top of page 11. Well,
Okay.
page,
Okay, so, I mean, so is it appropriate for us to turn that around and say we could consider approving this if the city made decisions in terms of the utilities?
or, I'm also seeing, many of the commissioners, you've all identified, I think justly, the amount of uncertainty. And I apologize that I didn't just, ride herd on the city engineer to get this. And it was about 5 PM this afternoon when I realized that I hadn't gotten those numbers. Apologize for that. I've been out of the office. Maybe this is something we do take to a city council workshop and, ask for some guidance there. I don't want to put the heavy burden on the planning commission when we do not have some information that could help. And obviously, some of the residents as well have been asking for the same information.
I mean, I was at the community meeting also, and I guess I heard loud and clear that the neighbors were opposed to it. If it got into the comprehensive plan and it had some common sense kind of approach to the development starting, I still say that a person needs to start at the borderline and keep on going down, not jumping down. But I don't think it's realistic to expect a developer to pay a couple $1 million to expand the water to their spot. But I also don't feel it's appropriate for a development in today's world to have 13 wells. I don't think that makes sense either, and even, or septic, either one. I think that within the city limits, that's not appropriate in today's world. So, but without knowing how many $1 million it is to extend the water. You know, maybe it's something that can work into the plan if it was known how much it was without assessing the rest of the landowners. So I think we have to have that information for us to make a intelligent decision. I guess is my take.
Chair's looking for a motion?
Now, the other thing I'd ask, I don't think it makes sense to keep asking the developer to pay for an application after an application. Is there a way in which this application can be put on hold or whatever until we get those other answers and then it can be reconsidered without a change in resubmitting and all of those kind of things?
Yeah, no, we had basically the withdrawal of the application in July was to basically stop the 60-day rule clock. And as we've done with some other applicants, you know, we don't require a second application fee. Knowing that, you know, just because the clock stops, I'm not doing I'm doing some work, but we're not essentially starting over again to really warrant the full application fee, you know, to charge that again. So the city already has some does exercise some flexibility with that.
Where are we at on timeline with the,
I believe the application was submitted on July 28th.
so we have until when to make a decision before it's just passed by statute?
I haven't done that calculation.
Roughly.
Roughly, it's 120 days, so.
We have months.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we table this to an undefined meeting prior to the expiration of the 120 days, allowing staff enough time to get the answers to all the commissioners' concerns brought forward today.
I would second that.
The motion to table, there's no discussion. Chair will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Two opposed, 3 approved. Motion carries. Do we need a I'm looking at my pal over there, Jolene. Do we need a second motion to table the the zoning map amendment?
I would believe so. It is an application, so I think there should be a motion on that too, consistent with the first motion, if that's the council or the commission's desire.
For consistency, I'll move the motion consistent with the first. To table.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
can you identify to the members of the public what we just did so they're aware?
Yes, that was.
Thank you.
So here's what happens now.
Just one quick question before we move farther. Does this continue the public hearing on this with that? Or is this public hearing actually all closed and we're done?
We technically, we have closed the public hearing. That doesn't mean that we won't allow comment at a future meeting. We have done that in the past, when we've had a table or something that, since legally the public hearing was already held, there's not another public hearing held. So what happens now is that the city will work with the applicant and figure out how to move forward, or if it's possible to move forward. And then there will be another meeting to bring it back for a final decision. So what we've said here tonight is no decision was made. So all parties can work on to see if they can reach agreement or withdraw the application or move forward for a final decision. It'll eventually will come back to the applicant to either a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a withdrawal of his application. So since there's not a public hearing, how will people know that this meeting is occurring?
I'll reach out to residents who've contacted me before, and we'll spread the news. Seems like it's pretty easy to contact Mr. Taylor, for instance, and then he can spread the word.
Okay. We're looking for a little something to do.
Contact, perhaps.
On behalf of the city, we want to thank everyone who participated in the evening. Thank you for coming out. So that ends item number 6, and we'll move to item number 8, which is a site plan amendment application for 22800 Everton Avenue North, Menards. Thank you for your patience. Spoken like a true developer. We'll give it a couple seconds so you have our undivided attention.
We should order those based on the assumption of time, assumption.
Yes, we should. I would ask, please, for those who are may I have your attention, please? Can I just ask you to step out into the hallway, please? Thank you very much. Okay, to repeat, we are here for a site plan amendment application for 22800 Everton Avenue North, Menards. I believe, Donovan, you're presenting on this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
As you can see on your screen, this was, just as a short recap, this was Menards' application to build a large warehouse in the rear of their building, and to also build a shipping center, and as part of it, they noted they were enclosing some areas to make them, allowing four-season use. This was the site plan that was submitted last time. I acknowledge that this access road doesn't correspond to what's truly there. And as at the last Plan Commission meeting, the Plan Commission did table this in order to allow the developer to discuss Broadway Road, the county road access, in order to alleviate some of the safety concerns, access concerns with the current access to Everton Avenue. So Mr. Tyler Edwards here from Menards, along with Ryan, the city engineer, and representatives from the Washington County Engineer's Office, met on August 8th. And what they brought to the table was the concept drawing that Jolene just passed out to you. This paper version shows essentially a fourth leg to that intersection that is pretty symmetrical and consistent with the other three legs. And this is something that they talked about at the meeting. I could not attend the meeting. The Washington County did estimate that the construction cost just within their right-of-way was approximately $250,000. Of course, that doesn't include anything on the Menards property, the access way, the traffic islands, and of course, this would be a cost that would be all the responsibility of Menards to provide this new access. And it's like, and changing other parts of the intersection as well. So, I mean, what I have, essentially, this is, Menards, I believe Mr. Edwards can, speak most accurately to what Menards is thinking right now, but it's, this is a pretty big improvement, a large cost for the type of improvement they're seeking to do with the warehouse. I acknowledge that, I've done that same Menards intersection many times, buying roofing, landscaping tools at this particular location. just this summer. And, however, though, I don't believe that this is something that the construction of this intersection warrants, delaying the project to build a warehouse. And of course, this is not a conversation that's by any means, if they don't build it now, it's by no means over, because Washington County, will be reconstructing, County Road, the County Road Everton, 32, I believe, or 32. And they'll again, I think, push for some improvements along this, along this intersection with this access, or even with the access, the Everton one. It would be my hope that they would see that perhaps only a right-in, right-out would work here. And that's really that was my desire when I saw the way it was, the Plan Commission was going to promote some discussion. And my preliminary discussion with the county engineer, county engineering staff, was that there would be something of what I think, provide immediate access, some immediate improvement, but not the large-scale investment that they came forward with this concept plan. And so I'd like to go forward with a recommendation of knowing that this conversation isn't over for access onto Broadway, but recommending that the Plan Commission approve the Menard site plan amendment. I'd be happy to take any questions from planning commissioners now.
So Donovan, to sum it up, Washington County didn't slam the door. They're willing to look at doing something at some
Correct.
point.
I mean, in your hands is, what they would like to see. And obviously the cost of it is large. There's also the loss of actual sales space. And also this somewhat contradicts one of the staff recommendations to have that fire access right there in that kind of what would be something of a northeast corner. If you recall, and I can, there's the small area here in the site plan you reviewed in July. This is basically a 12-foot wide gate that would allow a fire truck to, in the event of emergency, to enter this back area and be able to access these hydrants and have alternative access to the warehouse area and in the yard behind Menards, or the area. And so, I mean, obviously there's details to be worked out there, but as the Plan Commission desired, there was the conversation with the county and Menards regarding this access.
Thank you. Other questions, Donovan? Eric?
Yeah, Donovan, you said loss of retail space. It seems incredibly minimal in comparison to the enormous retail space they're adding. How many square feet are they losing there?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, obviously you can see here that bold line does represent some loss of space, and this is simply the county engineer's drawing, and it doesn't actually include any other right-of-way that they would desire. This is simply just, the vehicle access area. And so, it's hard to say. I mean, I see proportionally, yes, I mean, I agree with you. But it's also, doesn't take into account, would Menards want to have a little, remove some of the building that is close to the vehicles or have some more access within that, that northeast corner of the building?
Yeah, I spoke to Ryan on this plan on Monday night after the Highway 97 task force meeting. And he said that the county had presented him, he actually emailed me this on Tuesday morning because I had requested that he did, but And so I had a little bit more of a chance to look at it than those that just received it in the last 10 minutes. And he had mentioned to me that this was very conceptual. It wasn't to scale. It was kind of the conversation starter. And my impression was that this is a feasible way to alleviate pretty much all the concerns that I have on this property. I think it alleviates the congestion issues that occur. On the south side where the security backs up and into the main traffic lane on the south end of the parking lot, this diverts traffic to the opposite side, so I wouldn't even have that concern that I brought forward in the last one. It also alleviates the concern of people tying down where I'd mentioned that in that main traffic area. This solves almost every single potential problem that I can think of in the plan that was presented. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't include this. And I'm also not sure how we can, I don't know what the word is, motivate, encourage Menards to do this down the road. They've had an ongoing traffic and parking lot issue there for close to the 2 decades I've lived here. And I frequent Menards way too much. It's my preferred store in town even. I am there at least once a week. And I don't know that there's a really good time to go there and feel safe driving in and out of their parking lot. They haven't addressed this issue for decades. Nothing tells me that after we expand this and have greater use, more people, more trucks, more semis, more everything going in here, that they're gonna solve anything with the county after we've granted them everything they want. This is our one and only opportunity to fix this problem, unless we expect the county to do it, and probably at much greater expense. I don't know how you're going to mitigate or force Menards to fix this problem down the road unless we do it in this plan.
Other questions, Mike?
Donovan, have you, I know we got the price here is $250,000, but I like your idea we came up with. Some of us also have the right turn in, right turn out, so it'd eliminate a lot of this space. It wouldn't take over any of their new, fully remodeled area that they're talking about. The fire gate would still be there, because it'd only be 2 lanes, one lane coming in, 1 lane going out. Have you discussed this with Menards at all, as far as that part of it, or even with the county?
No, I'll leave it to Tyler to give you more description of the discussion. And, so I assume that was part of the discussion, right now. But they are the road authority here, and so they have ultimate, decision-making powers on how that road is accessed.
I mean, did they talk about the right in, right out at all? Or was it just this?
I'll defer to Tyler on that one.
Okay, that's fine.
Is the fire gate still in the plans? I thought there was question as to whether you were keeping that in there or not last time.
It's on there.
No, it's in the plans.
Okay.
That was something that Chief Newman and I discussed, and, he believes strongly that was there, and then, the applicant responded with introducing that in the site plan.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is it such that, I still have the feeling that we're holding Menards hostage for something that's not their problem. But shouldn't have it been done this way in the first place, when that intersection was built? And why is it being treated like a through street into their property versus a driveway access, like other businesses.
Because it's across from the light.
And I suppose it's part of that
It's across from
intersection
the
that
light.
makes the
Yeah, I mean,
difference.
it's just, it's a,
It's treated
you know,
differently.
driveway on steroids, basically.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. But I mean, is it necessary to do the median setups on both and add it on the other side as well? Or is it already there, the one that's drawn in?
No, I think that's
That's something
added.
that would be added? I mean,
Yeah,
it looks like there's a whole bunch of more to this than maybe is necessary, but,
well, I think
you know,
it's,
again, it kind of puts us in a spot where we're making the assumption that if we approve them, we certainly want to have them go forward with their development, but that if we approve it, we're hoping that the county and city get it done so that it does make sense. You know, this is a concept plan and not a plan.
right.
So, you know, I know I drive differently than Eric does, because I don't have a problem going in and out of Menards. I mean, I go there lots also, but, you know, and granted that you have to be Minnesota nice to, to maneuver, but I see this as something that maybe it's okay for the future if they're willing to do that, and it certainly would assist it. I mean, it would make it a lot easier for people getting in and out of there. There's no question about that when you add a second access, but is it mandatory to do that so that they can build the warehouses? I don't see that.
Any other questions on Donovan on this or any part of the development plan? Otherwise, would the applicant like to speak? We'll let you stretch your legs. You've been here for a while. Thank you for your
I've been
patience.
stretched out back there the whole time. Tyler Edwards with Menards. I did meet with the county and the city engineer a couple weeks ago. We talked about, you know, what we can do to help access based on the county's redevelopment of Broadway and is it Everton or Edgerton? I get those.
Everton.
Everton. The reconstruction of that road. And we talked about it for a while. I certainly asked about a right in, right out, or even just a right out, because no one really comes from the other direction anyway. That was shot down completely. Not an option for the county. They would only, at least in the meeting, the county guy would only allow complete, I don't know what they call it, matching on the other side of the road, which was a new eastbound right in on Broadway, then a new left out, a new median, a new through, a new right turn, and then a new left turn in on Broadway, which is quite a lot. And I think the $250,000 estimate was only for the actual improvements. Doesn't use utilities, work, anything in our parking lot too. So we're getting closer to $500,000 for that project. And talking with the county guy, it seemed to make more sense with him and I, at least between two of us, to look at options on Everton. Maybe filling some of the wetlands there, moving that access further south, more turn lanes that direction rather than on Broadway. For one big reason is it cuts out all our live good plant sales area. Adding the right in the middle of the yard where you see it there, plus any grading setback, plus any public right-of-way we'd have to dedicate, gets you 30 to 50 feet off of where the fence is today, into the yard. And I'd have nowhere to sell plants there because that's the garden center, which is another problem, which led us back to doing something else on the Everton intersection, which he talked about, and we have to look more into filling some wetlands and buying some credits and that sort of thing. But it is certainly more feasible than the $500,000 6-lane interchange in our parking lot and yard.
Who owns Everton?
County.
That's county.
That one's county too?
Yes.
Switched over not long ago. A couple years, but big picture not
And
long
like
ago.
North Shore. Now it's
That
city.
was the change, I think.
Mr. Chair, this may be a dumb question, but I'm assuming that any conversations you had about any new accesses touched on a right-in, right-out in between the two Evertons, the three-way intersections both to the north and the south. Did the county say that there's not enough distance between those intersections to allow for a driveway type situation, right in, right out?
The only place they were willing to consider any connection to Broadway was directly lined up with the access across the street. Nowhere in between
The two
the
lights?
two lights would that have been an option for them. While they were open to discussions, they're pretty strict on what they would actually allow, unfortunately.
That's interesting.
So are you pursuing any more discussion with them regarding Everton then?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're not counting this out or done yet. I think where we left it with the county was they're in the middle of some designing for Everton. And as they got into that, we could get into that with them and see what's feasible. I think the full 6 lanes is out for us. Right in, right out, certainly a good option, if it could be an option, as well as some change on Everton.
Any other questions for the applicant? Eric?
$500,000 sounds like a lot. I would be surprised if the connection to the southern leg of Everton, south of where your current entrance is, wouldn't be more with all the wetland issues. Do you have any idea what that cost will be?
The wetlands?
The wetlands and construction there?
No. No, you'd have to buy some credits inside a mitigation bank around here, 2 to 1. I don't know what the cost of those are at the time, but then it's more of a 2-lane drive aisle. You're just going further down, and you get a nice right turn in. It's certainly less pavement, yes, less utilities, less light poles that you have to build. So
What's the number that makes this infeasible for Menards?
well, $500,000 is a lot of money, but more than that, it's cutting out part of our yard, our live goods section, right next to the garden center. That's a huge problem.
I thought you were going to pontificate there, Eric, so I didn't say a word.
He didn't give a number, so.
Okay.
I don't know where to go.
Any other questions for the applicant? Well, don't go far, please. So, the chair is looking for a motion.
Some sort of way to address that issue with this application. And I would like to know what the costs and timeline would be to do something with one of the entrance and exit options. It appears that the county's not going to budge on Broadway, and that's unfortunate. I don't understand that hard line they've taken. But I would like to know what options would cost to improve the southern one, at least to some extent, to move it down a little bit further, to give a little bit more room for the entrance and exits. Because even if there hasn't been a near accident, I have sat in line there, either trying to get in or out, for at least 10 minutes, not all the time, but there are times when you just sit there because nobody can move. And have you put any dollars at all to any changes to that southern entry and exit?
No, we have not.
That's unfortunate.
You know, the difficulty we have here is we're on two county roads, so our clout is minuscule. With the county moving forward with a look at Broadway and a look at Everton, my stomach tells me they're not gonna make a decision until they're well advanced in those plans, which is probably well past Menard's timeline. Although I'd like to see that intersection cleared up, we have multiple ones like this in the city. It's not necessarily an excuse not to do it, but we all get to practice a fair amount of defensive or aggressive driving, depending which way you prefer to approach the intersection. And I don't see waiting for the county for whenever they get around to coming up with this design should hinder Menards from moving forward with their project.
I agree, and I don't see this as much of a solution with taking away, because it's gonna be, like you say, at least probably 50 feet of your retail area there, all along there, and it's an area that's specialized used now, so because even to align it, you have to go quite a ways into that property to make that work, so I don't see this plan being practical. Maybe this isn't their final plan, maybe when they do the design, it'll be different, and I don't know, I guess I'm not visualizing how expanding the existing entrance would improve anything, unless it would improve the turning radius for semis. You know, if it would make it easier for semis to get in and out, I don't know if that's a factor or not.
It increases, if they move it further south, it increases the distance from the
Broadway.
right turn into there, or are they going straight?
But realistically, is that gonna be 20, 30 feet,
I don't know,
one car?
don't blink. Other comments? Mike?
If they're gonna be working on Everton, out by the Taco John's and all that, out at that southeastern entrance, maybe they could widen that out a little bit and have a right turn lane and stuff in there. You know, just look at that as options, that's all. If they're gonna be working on Everton, maybe they can widen that out just there by the Menards, move Menards exit south a little bit more and give just a little more room for everyone, that's all. You know, just something to look at.
Eric?
It'll be interesting when the county comes in to redo Everton there. You're gonna have a very difficult time getting customers in and out of your business because you only have one access point, and it's incredibly insufficient. You look right across the street at what I think is your biggest competitor here in the metro, Home Depot. They have 2 access points. They have an access point very similar to the one the county is proposing here that goes to a street across the road from it, right by Holiday and those stores. I don't know the history on who had to pay for what, or if they planned that, or if it existed before that. I honestly just don't remember. But their parking lot works. You feel safer driving in there. I recently went to your Stillwater store a week ago and did some shopping there. Your access there is significantly better. Your parking lot design there is significantly better. You have 2 access points there. Your St. Croix Falls store is another one I not long ago visited. All of these since the last meeting. That has 2 access points. Significantly better parking lot design, significantly better traffic flow. I don't feel uncomfortable driving through your parking lot there. Your Blaine store off of Highway 65 has 3 access points, all of which could carry more traffic than the Forest Lake store can safely. Your Maplewood store, which is where I grew up, used to actually have a horrendous parking lot, actually functions a lot better with the newer designs. It has 3 access points as well. And I think that's a smaller store, if I'm not correct. I think it's smaller than the existing Forest Lake store. And what we're talking about here is putting a massive expansion on a business. And I'm not against big box stores or those things, but they have different needs. They have different requirements. This isn't a store that brings 3 or 4 customers in and it just needs a driveway. This business, and quite frankly, Home Depot and Cub Foods and Walmart and a number of the very large businesses in our community, they need an intersection like the one the county put on this map. Do I think a right-in, right-out would be amicable? Do I think it would be sufficient? Yeah, I think it would be. And I'd probably support it if that was the plan. Do I think this is a whole lot better? Do I think it solves all the problems? Yes. If we pass this as is, fellow commissioners, I would point to all of the concerns that I pointed through the last meeting that I said earlier would be alleviated if this intersection design happened. One of them is the gate canopy on the south side of the building. The Stillwater store, as an example, I call it the Stillwater store. I think it's technically Oak Park Heights. Donovan, can you pull up like Google Images or something, or Google Maps, and zoom into the Oak Park Heights store? Are you familiar with where that is?
No, but I can find it.
It's west of Lowe's, just a couple blocks.
36 and 5.
Yep, it's just east of 5, or is it Stillwater Boulevard, I think?
East of 5.
I mean, we want the Menards.
Nope, Menards. Oak Park Heights.
Seriously, I do frequent Menards.
Oak Park Heights down.
On the map. Okay. Oak Park is 2 words. If you move to the right, there's a map there and you can click on it. I'm not looking for the store's website.
Yeah, okay.
I want to point to my colleagues here on something that's a very easy fix that they can add in if they're going to pursue this. If you zoom in on the property and then look towards, it's going to be the right side of the building. So you have 2 access points north, and then on the right side of the building, that's the entrance to their gate canopy. And the gate canopy leaves this relatively long drag between the parking lot and the security gate. So you don't have cars, trucks, semis backing up and blocking where people are trying to park and safely walk around. We can do that on the Forest Lake store too, simply by moving the gate canopy to the west end of that building, leaving an area for cars to back up and stack. If we're going to have all of this additional sales and large material back there, that means this is a whole lot more semis coming in there. It means it's a whole lot more pickups. It means it's a whole lot more Amis showing up to buy cabinets and whatever else you're adding in there. Not only from this community, but from other communities. This size Menards and those size things will drive people from other communities that can't find these products in another store to this one. It's going to cause more stacking in that area than we have today. That's one thing I would ask that you add if you're going to pursue the motion that you have without the traffic design. Another is you should probably consider having them restructure the triangular area of their parking lot at the end of the, we'll call it the driveway. They haven't put forward a plan that fixes those issues. I don't have a desire to draw those up for them. but I think they should have one before you support this. We're going to be adding more cars, more trucks. It's going to be more dangerous than it is today. I would also encourage that you have them move the, and he said at the last meeting that this was very easy, although I have not seen the store manager actually do anything with it yet. You said it was very easy to move the ties, where people get their red flags and stuff for lumber that's sticking out the back end of my car, those sorts of things, so that it didn't cause more stacking issues in that same area where you have your security gate. I would recommend you have them move that as well. That would be the start of my concerns. The bigger piece for me, though, on this one is there is zero faith I have that they're going to pursue anything to connect Broadway. Or even realistically do anything on the south end. He's just told us that 225,000 or $500,000 is too much. He won't give you a number of what's amicable. Today you can hold him to do that because this plan says this is an expansion, and because of that expansion, these are the concerns we have. And it's their responsibility to fix these types of concerns on that property and keep our residents and our visitors safe. And by us not forcing that at this point, I think is very irresponsible of us. If we push this down the road and say, yeah, we hope they'll work with the county, I'm sure they'll work with the county. And they'll tell the county, nope, that's your road, that's your problem, that's your penny. And the county's not going to redo anything on their property. I highly suspect from all the developers that roll in here and tell us about all the wetland mitigation issues, I wouldn't be surprised if it was more expensive and more time consuming to fix the issues on the south side where the existing entrance is. And quite frankly, they should have two. I don't know of a single other Menards store around here that has one entrance. Can you tell me one? You know, we had a development south of 97, and I suggested we align the street, the main in and out on the east side of that development to the street that adjoined it across. We didn't want to delay that developer because he told us how expensive and how difficult it would be to go around the wetland mitigations. What's the difference with Menards here? When is this problem going to get fixed? There was a developer that told this board, and we collectively believed him and let him move that street to the north and not adjoin it like we typically require because of wetland issues. There's nothing that's going to be different here. The easy solution's right in front of us. It's in a very draft form. I think we can put very simple language to require that they work with the county and have an access, a full access as the county has drafted, as part of a requirement to build this project. I don't necessarily believe the access has to be built prior to the construction. I think a lot of those things can be worked out. And there's lots of details that have to be worked out with the county, but I think we need it in this plan.
Other discussion on the motion?
I call for the question.
A request for the question, so we'll call the question. The motion is to approve the site plan application for Menards per the staff recommendations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
2, am I correct? Motion carries. Is this, this doesn't go to the council?
No.
Okay. So we, on our last item, we're on our other. Do you have other, Donovan? I always
No.
let you go first.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I have, point of clarification?
Yes.
And maybe Jolene needs to answer the question. This is actually a point of Robert's rules, I guess, maybe I don't know. A 3-2 vote, is a vote like this for only the members present, or do we actually need a majority of the board's membership to pass a site
It's my
plan
understanding,
amendment?
it's my understanding, if we have a quorum, the decision stands.
Yeah, Robert's Rules of Order wouldn't address something like that. If there's any statutory requirements within the Minnesota statutes that require a full commission to approve such a plan, then that would be one thing, but to my knowledge, there's nothing in the statutes that requires a full commission vote for a site plan amendment.
No, I mean, there's some references to supermajorities for, say, rezoning something to a commercial, which would, would allow, but it's my understanding that once you have a quorum, that the body is in session and makes decisions, can make decisions.
And so this, the next step is this does not go to the council unless someone appeals it?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Other,
Sure. I just want to give a little explanation around the sudden agenda change, the zoning text amendment. Unfortunately, we did not get the final ordinance language from the city attorney. Bridget had some concerns around the accessory structures in the MU1, MU2, and BP zoning districts. And I had discussion with her, and really it was too late to get the complete language from her. So apologize for that misfire on that public notice. But we'll get that straightened out and renotice it, so we'll get that on the second Plan Commission agenda for September.
anything else, Donovan?
I want to give a public thank you to Commissioner Cunningham for braving the elements and public gaze, and hopefully, interactive questions at the Northern Paddle Music and Yoga Festival. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I braved the wonderful, beautiful weather we had that day. It was perfect. So I suffered greatly.
Any commissioners with another topic?
There's one thing. Donovan, could you check on that, the complaints tonight about all the dust on 190th? Could you look into that?
It's true. There were millings that they put there. They got old, they got rutted, and there was a, Public Works identified some cost of $20,000 to $25,000 per year trying to regrade that, reshape it. And they said, we have to start over.
Oh,
And
so they are working on it.
So it's back to the gravel and the dust. And
Are they gonna leave it like that?
I'm not sure. I can check on that for you.
I'm just asking questions because I don't know, and I just, we heard the complaints about the dust and stuff, and so I don't know where they're going. If Public Works is working on this project, they're gonna put more stuff down, or they're gonna go in there once a week and for dust control and put something chemicals down, or what?
It's my understanding there was some sort of chemical they were putting down, like they put it on the east side of 190th, east of Highway 61. That didn't receive very favorable reviews. Actually, I drove in that myself. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. I didn't know, with the I thought maybe it was just a temporary thing, trucks heading over to the roundabout and stuff like that. And
Yeah, I'll find out. I can send a message out to the Planning Commission with that update.
You know, I'd also mention that, or add to the manning the tent or staffing the tent for our comprehensive plan thing. If we ever do that again, I'd give word to anybody that does that. There's a great ice cream shop and a sandwich shop just up north, the other end of the parking lot up there. And my wife made a couple of different trips up there to bring back snacks, and they were great. It was well worth it, and she did a great job too.
Any others tonight? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Thank you all for your participation.